Have you ever heard somebody say that your self-worth determines your net worth? I mean, I hear it all the time. And in fact, there are so many people selling their expertise as a manifester, as a mindset mastery expert, as a wealth expert, all these different things. And their common theme is that self-worth dictates net worth. And it sounds really appealing. Why? Because if you don't have as much money as you want, you're like, oh, it's because I don't have high enough self-worth. So if I get better self-worth, I'm going to have higher net worth. But the problem is, it's not true. I've been doing this for 36 years, working with wealthy clients. And the one thing that I have seen over and over again is that your self-worth can lead you in one of two directions. You have unhealthy self-worth, meaning your worth barometer is low. You either can be broke or you can have a ton of money. There are more people probably that have low worth barometers that have a ton of money than broke people. I don't know. I don't know the statistics, but I'll tell you, there are plenty in both categories, right? And so what I want to dive into today is really looking into that, because I have worked with so many multimillionaires at a core level, they don't feel enough. And I remember, I'll never forget it. I was on a flight and I'm reading this article in the Wall Street Journal talking about millionaires who have really low self-esteem, low worth. And of course, I have to take the quiz, right? Because that's what you had to do. You had to take the quiz to determine where your self-worth was. I mean, I remember I barely passed it. It was like a 70. So I wasn't as bad as I could have been, but it wasn't as good. But it got me thinking. And the whole point of the article is the fact that people with a higher net worth, many of them have such low self-esteem. And that's what drives us to become so financially successful. I started then thinking about so many other people I work with and so many multimillionaires. And I'm like, God, that is so true. And so one of the things that I have noticed is that I've seen people and I've known people and I've had beneficiaries that, are really kind, caring people that, really focus on relationships and they don't have a lot of money. And oftentimes it's because they really haven't made the choices to have money, right? And a lot of part of it is they don't even know really what to do. But then I've also seen people who have that disease of more, where it's no matter how much they get, they want more. And, you can see it in this country where it's now the benchmark is being a billionaire or a trillionaire. And when you start diving into these people's lives, many of them, they're searching for the validity of their own worth out there. And I don't care if you're searching for your validity in another person, in your partner, in your company, or with your money, or with all the toys you have, or whatever. The issue is at the core level, what is more concerning about your self-worth is that you can never truly enjoy your life or your money if you don't have healthy self-worth. And that's what I want to really dive into today, because I just see it so often and I see it's such a trend in this country of really more focusing in on once you improve your self-worth, you're going to then have a higher net worth. And it's just simply not true. So today I'm going to share with you what I call the worth barometer. And many of you already know that, but we'll dive into that. And then also the wealth barometer and really how it plays in for your self-worth and your net worth, and why understanding it is so critical to really creating a secure financial future and retirement you love. So let's dive in. I'm Annette Bau, founder of the Millionaire Insider. For over 36 years, I have helped pre-retirees and retirees create coordinated retirement plans so they can stop worrying about money and instead spend their time doing what they love. And one of the biggest discoveries from my working with successful people, it wasn't about investing or taxes or retirement. It was understanding the psychology of money, how people think, how they show up, what they believe, and how it not only impacts their money, but their quality of life. It's so many people, and I'm sure there are people that follow me that, they follow me just because I'm wealthy by most people's standards, and they want to have more money. But the real key isn't just having more money. It's having an amazing life where you got money and the self-esteem, the inner peace that is so critical. And that's where I want you to get. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/175. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaireseries.com. This episode, this podcast is not designed to give you any advice. It's educational. We don't give financial, tax, retirement planning, or any advice. And so if you need advice, you need to consult with a qualified investment advisor, financial advisor, ideally a certified financial planner, somebody who is registered and licensed and a fiduciary. Today, you're going to learn why many experts believe self-worth determines net worth. And really, that's just not true. I mean, it's just not true. Yeah, maybe in some cases, but in a lot of cases, not true. I know it sells more courses. I know it gets people hopeful. But what I want you to understand is the reason you want to have high self-esteem isn't so that you can have more money. It's so that you can enjoy your money. Teaching you the concepts of getting more money is more about getting in the right mental state so you'll do what you need to do to achieve the results you want. And a lot of that is just the heavy lifting, right? It's the discipline. It's the saying no when you really need to and saying yes when you really want to. I joke because my youngest son, who is the most disciplined person I think I've ever met. And I never really realized that about him. He's a chemical engineering major, very smart, also a great athlete, plays volleyball at a D1 school. Now, I think I'm pretty disciplined. Compared to him, I'm not. But my point being is I do have the discipline in the areas I need to achieve my goals. One of the things that's so critical when it comes to us talking about your net worth, your self-worth, your worth barometers, your wealth barometer is the discipline you have to do what you need to do, even if you don't feel like doing it. Now, it's critical, and I want you to understand this. When you're looking at what you want to achieve, it's so important that you know what feeling you're aiming for, meaning like, what does money represent to you? What feeling do you want to have by having money? For me, for many years, it was security, it was peace of mind. Always it's peace of mind and flow, and just being able to be in that zone of not having anxiety, of just being in the zone. And I can honestly say I have it. It's unbelievable. And a large part of it is because of meditation. So we got to understand that, because see, what many people do is they want money because they have a belief that once they have money, how they're going to feel. So let's just take security, for example. Money is never going to make you feel more secure. I mean, you can have $10 million net worth, $12 million net worth, $20 million net worth, and you may not feel secure at all. It's your belief. It's how you're thinking about the money that makes you feel secure. And when you can get secure and free of anxiety, peaceful flow in your life, when you don't have that, that's how you develop that muscle so that when you do have the money, then you can be experiencing it. That's why it's so important that you work on your self-worth now, not just per se so that you can have money. I want to be really clear on that. The other is when you have a higher worth barometer, which is your belief in self-esteem, you do the things you need to do. You do the heavy lifting. You know, I shared with you in the last times when I was recording my podcast, we're down at our home on the beach in Mexico. I did not feel like doing it, but I knew that I hadn't done it before I left. And we decided to leave as scheduled instead of staying here so I could do it. So I knew I had to do it. And I didn't feel like it, but I knew I had to do it. And that's the difference, is the people that will actually go and do what they need to do versus not. As compared to the fact that it doesn't change the fact that my ultimate goal and everything I'm doing is to really continue to have peace of mind, flow. I mean, the great thing is like I work with amazing people. Like my clients are great, but I get to choose who I work with. So whenever I get a feeling that I don't like something or it's not going to be a good fit, really, I can sum that up in not very long because I can just tell, right? I can just tell because I've been doing this a long time. Well, that to me is priceless. Being able to work with who you want to work with so that you can stay in that zone you want to stay in now and when you have money is critical. And that's where I see a lot of people get really confused on it, because the issue is that you got to know what that bigger picture feeling is. But then in the moment, when you feel like going to have a margarita or you feel like going and having chocolate or whatever you feel like doing. Or, for some people, a lot of people, for a lot of us, foods are staple, right? Like for me, dark chocolate and nuts is like I'm in heaven. Other people, it's alcohol, drugs, sex. It could be procrastination, whatever it may be. Everyone's got something. And the key is that regardless of what that thing is that being able to process your emotions and being able to do what you need to do in the moment. That's so critical. We're going to dive into different aspects of the Worth Barometer and the Wealth Barometer so you can really understand that, as well as why wealthy people oftentimes do feel insecure. And then how to raise both Worth Barometers to create a financially secure life you love. If you want a free resource for today's episode, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/FFG and download our financial freedom guide. This guide is really designed to teach you the formula, the inner game, which is your foundation, the game plan, which is your strategy, and then the execution, which is your outer game. And it really encompasses the bigger picture so you know what you need to do. Obviously, what we're talking about today, which ties more into your foundation, is one element of that. And again, you can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/FFG. All right, so let's dive in. So as I've shared with you, we all hear this, that self-worth determines net worth. It does not. It makes sense, and especially for many of us who suffer from low self-esteem, like I did most of my life. It's probably been within the last 10, maybe 15 years that I have really improved my self-worth. And not in an arrogant way, but just in a way where I accept myself. I realize I'm not perfect. I'm the kind of person that I will do 100 things right. Everything will be going perfectly. And what I do, I focus on the one thing that I could do better. That total perfectionism. And I can honestly say I've gotten so much better at that. I broke my leg in November, and I swear, oh my gosh, having to rely on my husband and my kids and my friends for really 3 months was so crazy because it's like something I've never done. And I did it really well. In fact, I did it so well that I'm like, I kind of like that. No cooking, no cleaning. It's like, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And thank goodness I chose well. And I had great kids because they really did step up. The reality of it is really working on that, really working on loving yourself. There's so much data out there about how important relationships are. Well, I just want to encourage you, before you start focusing in on all those relationships out there, start with the relationship in here. Start with yourself. Start with loving yourself and accepting yourself with the flaws, with the things that you maybe don't love about yourself, or you're like, oh gosh, like for me, too much stuff to do, never enough time to do it, always want things to be perfect, all those different elements. Really just get into that zone to where you can really accept yourself how you are. Now, I believe the reason we're here on this earth is to evolve our soul, to really learn lessons and to become better people and to make a difference. Each one of us has a unique DNA. We have a unique gifts. And I think we're here to really use our God-given gifts to not only improve our local community, but the bigger picture. That's the only thing that's ever really made sense to me. You got to figure out what it's for you. The bottom line is when you get clear on that, it's a lot easier to make the choices on a daily basis, what you need to do. And in turn, you feel better about yourself. You feel better about who you are. So I really encourage you to make sure you're working on that. Other things that you oftentimes hear people say is, like, I'm terrible with money. Or my favorite one is, I don't do money. I'm like, well, are you living in a civilized country? Because it's so funny. It's like, oh, I don't do money. Well, do you buy things? Oh, yeah. Well, then you're doing money. Oh, no, I mean the bigger picture. I mean the planning and this. And I'm like, well, do you understand, if you put $5 in your account, then you have $5 to spend? Oh, of course I understand that. Okay, so you are doing money. Do you understand that if you invest $5 and it grows to $10, now you've made $5 on the money? Oh, yeah, I understand that. I'm like, oh, so you really do money, right? Now, obviously, it depends if they're close friends or not. If they're not, then I'm not going to be saying that, but you get the point. Some people, I'm just not lucky, or I never make the right decision, or I never get ahead. It's so interesting, the things we say and how it impacts our life. One thing that really transformed my marriage. Now, we've been married for almost 30 years. The one thing that has been so priceless is grace. and grace, and I would say patience, and even like a focus on giving my husband the benefit of the doubt. Just pausing, like even pausing and like what I do. And again, you have to look at what you do and what works for you. If I can sense we're heading to like a disagreement where we could, have an argument or we could get sideways, it's kind of like, I want to have this conversation. Do you think we should take a break and then reconvene and have it, or have it now? And what that does is it gets both of us to pause and kind of see the perspective of the other person to then have the conversation. The point being is that having grace in any situation, even if it's your relationship with money or how you're choosing money or what you're doing, in my opinion, is priceless. For me, I think the hardest thing out of everything is probably marriage, because you can't make your own decisions. It's like, you've got, like, I remember when I was a single parent with my daughter, I just made the decision, it was done. Well, that doesn't work that way in a healthy marriage. It's like two people, and then you have to discuss it, and then they feel one way and you feel one way. And it's like, oh, it takes so much time. It's so not efficient, which is so crazy on my personality. But the key is if you can have grace, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your friendships, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with money, it helps. It helps to keep you on track to what you need to do for the end result. Because obviously it's important to me that I stay married. I love my husband. I chose really well. It's also important to me to have a really good relationship with my kids. It's important with me to have a really good relationship with myself. So all those things are important. When you can get clear on that, then all of a sudden you can also now, know what you want to do and know what you need to do from an internal standpoint, but you can also take a pause and really look at the things you're saying, what you're doing. Because when you have patience and even like non-judgment, and you find yourself saying things that are just crazy, like, I'm never going to get ahead, I'm terrible with money. It's like, wait a minute, what did you just say? So funny, because people will come to me for advice and I'm always like, well, do you really want it? Oh, yeah. And then they say something and I'm like, wait a minute. You tell me that you want to achieve financial freedom, you want to create a life you love, but then you're saying something like this. Oh, and let's just say they're saying, I'm terrible with money, or my partner's terrible with money, or we don't save enough, or this. It's like, well, what do you need to do to save enough? See, we've got to focus on what we want, not what we don't want, because life is going to just universe is going to bring us whatever we're focused on. So you got to be aware of that. Now, the issue with so many of the beliefs we have is it influences, our behavior, and it influences the financial decisions we make. One of the things that I oftentimes see is, and you may too, is that you'll be somewhere and like somebody is like the foremost expert on something. Now, let's just say that what's money. Now, maybe you don't know it or you do know it, but it's like what they're saying, you're like, or their situation and you're like, oh, that's so interesting that this person is such an authority on money and they really don't have any, right? And so then what ends up happening is you feel like you're behind, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'll never catch up. And now all of a sudden you're putting yourself in the realm of their situation where you don't even know the reality, right? What you got to be clear on and what you got to be careful about, getting back to grace, is that you give yourself some grace and that you understand that somebody acting overly confident does not mean that they are competent or that they're really even qualified in the areas of money. The other thing I see is that the opposite is true too. I've met so many people in my course of my life that have a lot of money and then they're apologizing for it, or they're kind of dismissing it. Like they can't really accept it, or they feel like, why me? I mean, I get that, you're like, why me? And then you're like, oh, that's right. Like before I left for my trip to go up north, I worked until midnight, and then I get up the next day at 7:30 and I have one of my clients back east is having an issue. And so, that delayed me for 2 hours. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. I do the things I need to do to achieve the goals and to really serve my clients well. And I'm not saying that you need to be working till midnight. That particular situation I did because I didn't want to do it up north. So I had a choice to make. Do I stay at my office and work, or do I go home, which normally my go-to would be go home and get sleep, right? Because I'm anal about sleep. But to me, I would rather have done it in my office. It's easier to do. And then versus having to go up north and do it. So again, you got to make those trade-offs. But when you're in the right mindset, you can do that. One of the things that I have always found absolutely fascinating is that when people appear on the outside to really have it all, the house, the cars, the big diamond ring. I remember one of my friends, like, I've got the nicest car, I've got the big diamond ring. And I'm like, well, there's a lot more to life than that. But, it's just interesting that she felt like she had arrived. And at the core level, when you start talking to her, it was like she just did not feel enough. She felt like she was enough because she had a big diamond, because she had a big house, because she had the right car. When you're always chasing, the issue is it's that disease of more. And the problem is, as I've shared with you, you get 1 million and you don't feel good enough. And then 2 million, 3 million. Before you know it, you've got $10 million and you're not feeling different. Before you know it, you have $1 trillion and you're not feeling different. And you're still on that search for more. That's what I'm talking about. They're trying to fill a void in here with something out there. It just doesn't work. And then they compare themselves. They're always trying to prove themselves. The issue, oftentimes, it totally stems from their childhood, from their own worth barometer. One of the things that I want you to focus in on, and this was something that my research was so based on, was the fact of this group of people who has money and has a healthy worth barometer. They are confident, they're kind, they've got good relationships, they've got high integrity. They're not focused in on having those internal needs met out there. And I get it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is so important. One of the things that this requires in all of this is really getting good financial habits, being able to develop that muscle to understand that when you say yes to anything, you're saying no to something else. So you're saying yes to having that latte every day. What are you saying no to? Is it funding your retirement? Is it going out to dinner with your family? See, the issue isn't per se the latte or the designer purse or the trips or the golf or whatever it may be. It's the combination of all of them, right? The expensive jewelry, the expensive cars, the expensive house, the trips. Not being able to say no to anything. And you just say yes, yes, yes. And what you inherently are saying no to is a secure retirement you love. And that is what I'm talking about. There's nothing fun about living in retirement broke. So let's talk about the worth barometer for a minute. So you understand it's your belief in self-esteem, and it really impacts your identity, your confidence, your emotional relationship with yourself, and ultimately with your money. We measure it on a grid. So above the grid is love, peace, joy. Below the grid is fear, anxiety, worry, more limited beliefs. And then at the grid, most people that are at the grid don't even know there is a grid. So a lot of times, once they understand it, they automatically go above the grid, meaning because they're like, oh, I had no idea. I had no idea that my thoughts were things. I had no idea that if I focus my energy on what I want, I can change everything. But I'd encourage you to start by asking some questions. Do you believe that you deserve success? Do you believe that you deserve to be financially free? Do you trust yourself? Do you believe that money creates opportunities, that it creates freedom, that people that have money are good people? Let's face it, there are people that have money that are good and there are ones that aren't. I just go back to my core belief. I personally believe there's karma and I believe there's God. And I believe both are equally concerning if you're not doing the right thing. And I know, it's so easy right now with what's going on, where you have these people that are billionaires that are just more and more and more. And then you have people that can't even afford to feed their family. It breaks my heart. And so what I do is I buy food and I send my energy out there. I do what I can do, but I get that it's concerning. At the same time, we don't want it to get to where it immobilizes us to where we don't do anything. Do you believe that people that have money are generous, or are they greedy? Do you believe you're capable of achieving your goals? All those things impact where you are. And the beliefs you have are what become that internal thermostat of what you end up doing. I encourage you to think of the worth barometer kind of like a scale, like where you're weighing yourself. Sometimes you feel really good about it. Other times you don't. Other times you don't even go near it. And what I want you to do is just look at the fact of your life that you've got to really be clear on what you want. And then you've got to do the heavy lifting to get there and understand that all of us who have gotten there have done it. Like the funny thing about all of this is that when I hear somebody say, well, Annette, it's easy for you. It's like, wait a minute. I didn't have any money like 35 years ago. I was investing $25 a month. So if I can do it, you can do it. I was waitressing in college. I didn't have it like my kids. It's always funny because my dad's like, you don't know what it was like. I walked 8 miles to and from school because he only had an 8th grade education because he couldn't get to school. They had to have the horses for the ranch. So 8th grade, he quit school. And it was so sad because my dad was so pro education. He taught himself to read and write. And his writing was atrocious, but it's so heartwarming to think of his story because he worked so hard. And I can remember when it's going to be teary-eyed, but I can remember when I was a freshman in college and I absolutely hated it. I wanted to just get out and make money. And my dad wouldn't let me. He's like, Annette, you cannot. You have no idea how important it is and how lucky you are to be able to get educated. And I was like, gosh, what priceless insight to give from somebody who was not very educated and who really did not have the opportunities. And that's what I want each one of you guys to get, is to really get clear on what you need to do to be able to achieve that. Now, if you are ready to really create a financially secure life you love, I encourage you to go to themillionaireinsider.com/5Q, 5 simple questions, and it really directs you to the next best step. So again, themillionaireinsider.com/5Q. But the reality of it is that when you look at your worth barometer, you want that to be healthy because that really gives you the inner peace. You then have your wealth barometer, which more measures the financial numbers and even somewhat the behaviors of what you're doing or not doing. It's going to be impacted by the worth barometer, but your wealth barometer can be high, meaning you have money, but your worth barometer is low, so you've got a miserable life. So you want to be really careful on that. But let's look at some questions to ask regarding your wealth barometer. Do you save enough? Do you invest? Do you avoid unnecessary debt? Do you fund your retirement? Are you funding your Roth? What about a backdoor Roth? That's so important. Do you have your estate plan updated? Do you know how much you're spending? How much you can spend? How much are you saving? Are you up to that 50%? I don't know which episode I talked about it, but I love saving a ton of money. And even now, it's so ingrained in me that do I have to? No, but it makes me feel good. And as I share with you, my mom basically disinherited me and my brother. We got some because of the money I managed and because I understand how assets pass. But one of my siblings basically got about 85 to 90% of my mom's estate, in between there, about 87%. And it's so nice to be like, oh, that's okay. I really don't need the money. And so it didn't really make a difference. Now, one thing I will say, because I think everything always comes around, goes around, when my father died, my mom gave me money that I had funded into a retirement for her. So basically it was my money, but she gave it back to me. Well, it was probably, I don't know, 12,000, maybe 14,000. Well, I've grown that to be like 300,000. So you take the 300,000 plus the other 40,000 I got, I'm at 340. So I ended up number 2 in place, even though I was supposed to be disinherited. So I think things always happen for a reason. But, the point being is that when you have money, you don't need somebody, you don't get left an inheritance. It doesn't really matter. And that's where I want you to be clear on, because it's just a good feeling to not feel like you need that money. When you say yes, are you supporting your retirement plan or a retirement you love? That is a critical question, because again, whenever you say yes, you're inherently saying no. And then what you want to look at is, what are you doing on a daily basis? Because your wealth barometer measures your execution. You can believe you're worthy or you can believe you're not. But the issue is, if you don't believe you're worthy, a lot of times what happens is you end up spending money on things you don't need or want, and it impacts your wealth barometer. Now, as I mentioned, that's heading to broke. Or what can happen is you're working at the expense of everything. So you're not taking care of your health. What ends up happening then is you've got a ton of money, but you've got a miserable life. What I want you to look at when you're doing it is, more importantly, what are your beliefs? What are your behaviors? Ideally, what you want is you want your worth barometer and your wealth barometer to be working together. When that happens, magic occurs. A healthy worth barometer, along with a healthy wealth barometer, equals confidence, financial security, peace of mind, freedom, purpose. And when you combine it, that's how people create financially secure lives they love. Because the bottom line is, the whole reason on the Millionaire Insider, we're all about not just creating financial security, but really financial security along with the life you love, is because there are so many people who have money and they're really not have the inner peace or the happiness. And so then it's kind of like, you look at them and I'm like, God, who would want their life, right? You want to have a life that you look at from the outside and you absolutely love. People are like, you are so lucky. And then what you can realize is you can thank them, but you can realize I've really created that luck by the choices I've made, by really elevating my worth barometer, my wealth barometer. So let's talk about how you can raise them. First thing is stop really comparing yourself and really celebrate your progress. Really focus in on what is the ultimate goal. Invest in learning. The fact that you're even here is priceless. Spend time with people who encourage you to become a better person. When it comes to your wealth barometer, create a plan. Save and invest consistently. Reduce unnecessary expenses and debt. Make sure you've protected your family. Do that annual review of your plan and then consistently take action. Once you have a plan, then you got to implement it. So in closing, I just want to recap by saying, money matters, but money isn't everything. Your self-worth is going to dictate more about what you're going to go through and what you're going to experience when you're retired and in your financial future than anything else, even if you have $1 billion. Self-worth alone is not going to build net worth. I know everyone wants to tell you that. And it's going to help you because if you have higher self-worth and you have better beliefs, you're going to be willing to do the work you need to do that's going to help you when it comes to your wealth. But it's not going to be a direct connect. Like, okay, I've raised my self-esteem. I'm not doing anything I need to do, and therefore I'm wealthy. Real financial freedom happens when your beliefs support your goals and your actions support your beliefs. And that's when you really can see your wealth barometer and your worth barometer working together. And that's what it really is about, creating a financially secure life you love. And it becomes so much easier. So, a couple takeaways. Your self-worth is going to dictate the feeling you have now and when you have money. And so, it's so wonderful to be able to be in a place where you feel really good now, even if you don't have the money you want. That, in my opinion, is priceless. Wealth is built through beliefs and consistent financial behaviors. When you elevate both your worth barometer and your wealth barometer, that's when you can really see lasting financial confidence that really propels you to where you want to be and where you need to be. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and also leave us a review and ideally a 5-star. We love those so that we can really continue this. This is a free endeavor. It's really my give back. It's so funny because I don't do a ton of volunteering, but this podcast is really about helping people that aren't yet where they need to be to have a financial advisor. To have a financial advisor is a privilege and it's expensive, especially a good one. And so this is really designed to give you the insight you need so that you can be doing the work until you're in a position to be able to afford one and really need one. If you are in a position where you do have assets or you do need help, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/5Q and take our 5-question survey to really determine what your next best step is. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Annette Ba'u. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.